Good morning, dear students. Our today's class is on infection and microbial pathogenicity. Infection and immunity involve the interaction between the host, in our case, humans are the host, and between the infective agent or microorganism. So, before we start learning our immunology classes, it is important and necessary that we should have an idea about what all infectious agents enter our body and cause diseases and what is that infection process. So, based on the relationship of microbes with respect to humans, microorganisms can be divided into or classified into saprophytes and parasites. Saprophytes are the free living microorganisms that live on dead or decaying organic matter. They are usually found in soil and water and are generally unable to invade the living host. There are exceptions, but generally they do not cause disease in living host. Now about parasites. They are the microorganisms that live on a living host, derive nutrition from the host, and also they can cause harm to the host. There are two types: microparasites, which include the microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, etc., and the macroparasites, which include the helminths. Now, the parasitic organisms, they can be again divided into either pathogens or as commensals. So, first about pathogens. Pathos means suffering and gen means produce. So, pathogen means suffering causing or disease causing. So, pathogens are the microorganisms capable of causing disease. However, they represent only a very small population of the microbial world, very small number of microorganisms among all the microbes, very few causing human diseases. So, pathogens are the disease causing organisms, whereas commensals, they are the harmless microorganisms that can harbor on a living host, human, as normal flora of the host without causing any injury to the host. So, what we call as normal flora, they are commensals organisms in our host. Now, there is another category, that is the opportunistic pathogens. As the name indicates, they cause disease whenever they get an opportunity. So, these organisms, they are capable of causing disease in immunocompromised people when the usual defense mechanisms of humans are reduced or altered by some surgical procedures or by underlying metabolic or infectious disorders. Like we know, in diabetic patients there are more chances of this candida infection, or we know this HIV infected people, their immunity will be, their immune status will be very low, so they will be prone to many diseases. So the opportunistic pathogens, generally they do not cause disease in a healthy individual, immunocompetent individual. So they cause disease usually in the immunocompromised individuals. So that is about pathogens, commensals, and the opportunistic pathogens. Now about the terms infections and infestation. Infestation is different from infection in that it applies specifically to organisms of macroscopic size, such as the parasitic worms in intestine, that is worm infestation, or the infection by arthropods like lice or mites, itch mites on body surface. So infestation, by the term infestation we mean macroparasites are usually causing clinical conditions on body surface, or by the term worm infestation we mean parasitic worms in intestine. So the infectious microbial agents include bacteria, virus, fungus, protozoans, helminths, and there are prions also. So about the term infection. Following the entry of microorganisms into our body, it may lead to either infection, infectious disease, or colonization. So we have to distinguish these terms. So infection, it is the process in which a pathogenic microorganism enter to our body, they lodge themselves in our body, they multiply in our body, which means within the host. So the entry, lodgement and multiplication of the pathogenic microorganism within the host, that is infection, and it does not invariably result in disease, which means infection usually it lead to colonize, not usually, infection may lead to just colonization. The pathogenic organism enters, multiplies, but they do not invade and neither cause disease or they cause any specific immune response. But infectious disease means the organism lodge, they multiply in our tissues, they invade our tissues, and it will result in the symptoms of a particular disease. So that is the difference between infection, colonization, and infectious disease. So disease is but a rare consequence of infection, which is a common natural event. So all infections does not invariably result in disease. Now let's move on to the classification of infection, the types of various infections. Infections may be classified in different ways. First, we'll start with primary infection. So primary infection, it refers to the initial infection with a pathogenic microorganism in a host. The first infection, the initial infection with a specific pathogenic organism in a host. Now the second one is reinfection. It results following subsequent infection by the same microorganism. That is why it is called reinfection. The same organism is causing disease again. Now secondary infection. Here a new pathogenic microorganism set up an infection in a host whose immunity is already lowered by a pre-existing infection. So secondary infection, here new pathogen is causing a disease. The person already have a pre-existing infection. Now next is focal infection or focal sepsis. It indicates a condition where due to infection or sepsis at localized sites at a particular focus such as appendix or tonsils, which lead to generalized effects. So infection beginning in a focus, in a localized site, leading to generalized effects, that is focal infection. Now cross infection, when a patient is already suffering from a disease and in that person a new infection set up from another host or another external source, it is termed as cross infection. Now moving on to a new term, that is nosocomial infection. The term nosocomion, which means hospital. So cross infections occurring in hospitals, they are called nosocomial infection. So these infections, they are different from the patient's primary condition. Now about iatrogenic infection, which is otherwise called physician-induced infection. This refers to the infections which are induced by the professional activity of the physician, doctor, or healthcare workers, resulting from preventive, diagnostic, treatment, therapeutic, or other procedures in the hospital. So, the iatrogenic infection, they are the infection induced by professional activity of health care workers. So, we have discussed about primary infection, reinfection, secondary infection, focal infection, cross infection, nosocomial infection, and iatrogenic infection. Okay, now moving to types of infection depending on the source of infection. Based on the source from which the person acquired the infection, we can classify infection into two. They are endogenous infection, in which the source of infection is within the body, which means either the normal flora if breaches the anatomical barrier, or endogenous reactivation of a previous infection. So, if the source of infection is from the host itself, it is called endogenous infection. Now, the next one is exogenous infection, in which the source of infection is outside the host own body. So, the infective agent is from outside causing a particular infection. So, that is the classification based on the source of infection. Now, based on the clinical manifestation produced, we can classify infection into one is inapparent or subclinical infection, otherwise it is called asymptomatic infection. It is an infection that is active in the host, but it does not produce noticeable symptoms, visible symptoms. That is asymptomatic or inapparent or subclinical infection. By these three terms, we mean the same, which means the infective agent, the disease-causing pathogen is within the host, it is active, it is multiplying, but there is no visible symptoms. Now, atypical infection, it means the usual manifestations of the disease are not present. Instead, atypical symptoms, the symptoms that are not common seen in that particular disease, are present in a particular person. That is atypical infection, which means the typical symptoms are absent, but atypical symptoms are present. Now, another type of infection, that is latent infection. It refers to an infection that is inactive or dormant or in the hidden form within the host, but it is capable of reactivation later, maybe after months, maybe after years. The same organism, it can reactivate and cause a disease. That is latent infection. So, we have discussed about the various type of infection: primary infection, reinfection, secondary infection, etc. There is one more term, that is superinfection. It is actually defined as a second infection superimposed on an earlier one by a different microbial agent of exogenous or endogenous origin that is resistant to the treatment used against the first infection. That is superinfection. So, these are some of the important classification system that we use as per where we have different methods to classify infection. Okay. Now, about an infectious process, there are two types: localized infection and systemic infection. But from the term itself, it is clear. Localized means it is limited to a defined area or maybe a single organ, whereas systemic infection, it means it affects the entire body. Through blood it reaches different organs, and there will be systemic manifestations. And all these infection, this process, it progress through different stages. There is there should be an incubation period. There will be prodromal symptoms, the initial symptoms of the disease. Then the clinical illness will be there, and there will be a convalescent phase. So the prodromal symptoms means the initial symptoms of any disease. There will be fever, myalgia, malaise, and all those. So these are the initial symptoms which are termed as the prodromal symptoms of disease. So that is about the infectious process. Now we are moving on to the chain of infection, how this entire process happen in a host body. The organism enter from there should be an origin. From there it enter the host. In the vulnerable host, the organism reaches through a particular portal. So there should be a portal of entry. Then it cause a disease. Then from that person, it will be released from that host. So there should be a portal of exit. So let's see that chain of infection. So we'll begin with the sources of infection and reservoirs of infection. So the starting point for the occurrence of an infectious disease, it is known as the source or and reservoir of infection. So source and reservoir, they are not always synonymous, but sometimes source and reservoir may be same in case of certain diseases. So source, the source of infection refers to a person, animal, or object from which a microorganism is transmitted to the host. So that is the source of infection. Whereas reservoir is the natural habitat in which an organism lives and multiplies. So reservoir may be a person, animal, arthropod, or plant, or soil, or a combination of these on which the organism is dependent for its survival, where it reproduces in such a way that it can be transmitted to susceptible host. So I hope you understood the difference between source and reservoir. So source is the immediate thing from which the disease causing organism is transmitted to the host, and reservoir means in which that disease causing particular organisms lives and multiply. So the term source and reservoir may be same for many organisms but are not always same. For example, in case of tetanus infection, the reservoir and source of the infective agent, that is Clostridium tetani is the causative agent of tetanus. So the reservoir and source is the same, that is soil. But in case of hookworm infection, the parasitic infection, the reservoir of infection is man. Within humans, the parasite lives and multiplies, but the source of infection is not directly from human. Instead, it is soil contaminated with the larvae of hookworm. So I hope now it is clear what is source and what is reservoir. So that is the difference between source and reservoir. Source refers to the immediate source of infection and may or may not be a part of a reservoir. Now, from which all sources human get infection? So we'll begin with human reservoir or human source. By far the most important reservoir and or the source of infection for humans is human itself. Man is often described as his own enemy because most of the infectious diseases are contracted from human sources only. So the diseases that can be spread from one person to another, that is called a communicable disease. Now human sources may be either cases of disease cases of humans or maybe carriers of the disease. So from either patients or from carriers, a disease causing agent can be transmitted to another person. So first about patients. These are the person in a given population identified as having a particular disease. The cases of various types depending upon the appearance of symptoms. There may be clinical presentation, sometimes it may be subclinical, sometimes there may be latent cases. So the patients are those who have the symptoms of the disease, whereas carriers, it refers to the persons or at times animals that harbor the infectious agent in the absence of any clinical symptoms, but they can release or they can shed the organism from their body through contact or to air or through their secretions. They can release or shed the disease causing agent. So carriers, they harbor the infectious agent without suffering from the ill effects of that particular disease, but they are able to transmit that particular disease to another person. It results due to inadequate treatment or immune response occurring in some diseases, which lead to incomplete elimination of the organism from the body. Though carriers are less infectious than patients, they are more dangerous as they often go undetected and continue to transmit infection for a long period. The best example is in case of hepatitis B virus. Now there are different types of carriers. There is this healthy carriers. They refers to the subclinical cases who develop into carriers without suffering from the ill effects of that particular disease. Example in case of poliomyelitis or sometimes in case of meningococcal meningitis, etc. The healthy carrier, they suffered from the symptoms of or the clinical condition of that disease, but they can transmit the disease causing agent. Now convalescent carrier is a carrier who has recovered from the disease and continue to harbor the disease causing agent and shed the pathogen from that person's body. So healthy carrier never suffered from the disease, clinical disease, but convalescent carrier is the person who has recovered from the disease and continue to harbor and transmit the disease causing agent. Now depending on the duration of carriage, there may be temporary carriers or chronic carriers. Temporary carriers, they shed the disease causing organism for less than 6 months. The incubatory or the healthy carriers or the convalescent carriers, they are actually types of temporary carriers. So they transmit the disease causing organism for less than 6 months, whereas chronic carriers, they transmit or they shed or they release the disease causing organism for indefinite period. Example is in case of hepatitis B virus. Now depending on the source of infection, there is contact carrier and paradoxical carrier. Contact carrier is a person who acquires the pathogen from a patient. Paradoxical carrier refers to a carrier who acquires the pathogen from another carrier. Now urinary carrier, those who release the disease causing agent through, and fecal carriers, those who release the disease causing agent through fecal matter. So that is about human carriers. Now let's see the next source of infection or reservoirs of human infections are animals. So the source of infection may sometimes be animals and birds, and those diseases and infections which are transmitted to humans from vertebrates, from animals, from birds, these are called zoonotic diseases or zoonosis. There may be bacterial, viral, fungal and parasitic agents or microorganisms which are transmitted from animals to humans, and the best examples include from animals This rabies, that is one common one which is transmitted from dogs or through bats. Leptospirosis from rodents, rat. Plague, that is again through rat. Then influenza from pigs. Then there are many diseases which are transmitted through cat. There is toxoplasmosis. There is a parasitic disease called hydatid disease which is transmitted through dog. Many fungal infections, dermatophytosis, which can be transmitted from dogs and cats. Birds can also act as source of infection from parrots. Psittacosis, chlamydia or chlamydophila psittaci, it can be transmitted. There is cryptococcosis, histoplasmosis. Those are fungal infections or diseases which are transmitted through pigeons. So these are the animal reservoirs which act as source of infection to humans, and these diseases are called zoonoses. Now, insects, they can also act as an important source of infection to humans, and the best examples include mosquitoes, ticks, mites, flies, fleas, lice. These all can cause infection to humans. Redovid bug, it can act as a source of infection to humans. Now, by the term vector, what do you mean by a vector? By the term vector, we mean an organism, usually an arthropod, which can transmit the disease-causing microorganism from one host to another. And vectors can be divided into mechanical vectors and biological vector. Now, what is the difference between mechanical vector and biological vector? By means of mechanical vector, we mean the disease-causing agent is transmitted just mechanically, which means there is no multiplication of the disease-causing agent within the vector. Such vectors are called mechanical vector. The best example is in case of this house flies, domestic flies. They can transmit the causative agents of dysentery or typhoid fever. Whereas sometimes the pathogenic microorganism multiplies within the body of the vector, and they undergo some part of its developmental cycle within the vector. Such vectors are termed as biological vector. The best example in case of Aedes mosquito or Anopheles mosquito in case of malaria. So biological vectors, they transmit infection only after the pathogen or the pathogenic microorganism has multiplied in the vector sufficiently, or the microorganism has undergone a developmental cycle. The interval between the time of entry of the pathogenic organism into the vector and the vector becoming infective is called the extrinsic incubation period. Now, beside acting as vectors, some insects, they may also act as reservoir host. Infection is maintained in such insects by transovaral passage. So, insects can act, usually the blood-sucking insect, they can act as a source of infection or reservoirs for human infection. Those diseases, we call it as arthropod-borne diseases, and insects like mosquitoes, ticks, mites, fleas, lice, flies, all these which transmit infections or infective agents, they are called vectors. Now the next source of infection, that is the non-living things, soil and water. Some pathogens can survive in soil for very long periods. The spores of tetanus bacilli, it can remain viable in the soil for many years and serve as the source of infection. Fungi like Histoplasma capsulatum, Nocardia, asteroids, They can these infections are transmitted to humans from soil. Parasites like roundworm, hookworm, they survive in soil and they cause human infection. Now, water may act as an important source of infection either due to contamination with pathogenic microorganism or due to the presence of aquatic vectors. Cyclops, that is an important aquatic vector, and they have role in guinea worm infection. So about the bacterial infection, cholera, vibrio, then about virus, hepatitis virus, these are these diseases, cholera and hepatitis, usually hepatitis A viral infection. It is transmitted through contaminated water. So that is about soil and water. Now the next source of infection is food, contaminated food. Contaminated food may act as an important source of infection. The presence of pathogen in food may be due to external contamination, that is like food poisoning by staphylococcus, or sometimes pre-existent infection in meat or other animal products like salmonellosis. So food can also act as an important source of infection. And there is another intoxication, that is botulism. It is again an important disease transmitted to humans through contaminated food. So these are also important source of infection to humans. So we have discussed about the various sources and reservoirs of infection. Now the methods or routes or the modes of transmission to human beings, which actually are the portals of entry of the disease causing agent to humans. Now let's see the various modes through which microorganisms are transmitted from the reservoir or source to the susceptible host. So first about one of the important mode of transmission, that is contact. So infection may be transmitted by direct or indirect contact. Direct contact is through skin and mucosa of an infected person, like through unclean hand, through kissing, or the sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis. So organisms are transmitted by direct contact in this. Again, common cold, skin infections, eye infections, etc. These are considered to be infections which are transmitted by direct contact. Now leprosy, again a disease that is transmitted through direct skin contact. Now indirect contact is through the agency of fomites. So fomites are inanimate objects like clothing, toys, etc., which can act as which can be contaminated by a pathogen, and these fomites, they can act as vehicles of transmission. So fomites are inanimate objects which carry this disease causing pathogen. The best example is this face towels shared by various people or various person may lead to the spread of trachoma, that is a bacterial disease. So diseases can be transmitted either through direct contact or indirect contact, and such diseases which are transmitted very frequently from person to person, they are considered as contagious diseases. Now moving on to the next source of infection, that is inhalation. Respiratory infections, agents causing respiratory infections are acquired by inhalational route. These organisms are shed into the environment by patients in secretions from the nose or throat during sneezing, coughing, or speaking in the form of droplets. And the best example for some airborne infections or diseases: pertussis, tuberculosis, influenza, common cold, and the best example of the time, this coronavirus infection, they are transmitted through airborne transmission or inhalation. So majority of respiratory infection, they are acquired through inhalation. Now the airborne transmission, that may be either droplet nuclear transmission or this through dust, that is droplet transmission. Larger droplets, they travel for a short distance, they settle down on clothing and other objects and become a part of the dust. They can infect only those persons who come in contact with the source. Whereas airborne transmission means when the droplet is small, it can travel a long distance, it can infect any person it finds on its way. Primary contact with the source is not necessary in case of airborne transmission. Organisms transmitted through this route include tuberculosis, measles, chickenpox, etc. So, inhalation, that is airborne transmission, it may be droplet transmission or droplet nuclei transmission. Now moving on to the next mode of transmission, that is ingestion. In case of intestinal infection like cholera, dysentery, food poisoning, botulism, etc., generally the mode of transmission, the disease causing organisms, they contaminate food or drink, and when a susceptible host have this contaminated food or drink, the disease causing agent gain entry to the host and cause infection. So foodborne infections occur mostly through carriers engaged in handling or preparation of food and contaminating the food stuff. The water supply may get contaminated with the feces of patients or carriers. Now, all these can transmit infection. So that is about ingestion. Now about inoculation. Pathogens, in some instances, they may be inoculated directly into the skin or tissues of the host. That may be either through animal bite or they get inoculated directly into the tissues. So these rabies virus, which is inoculated directly by the bite of a rabid animal, that can be considered as a disease transmitted by inoculation. Or the spores of Clostridium tetani present in soil, they get deposited due to following wounds that can lead to tetanus. So these are considered as inoculative method of transmission. And the blood-borne infections like hepatitis B virus infection, hepatitis C virus infection, HIV infection, they are transmitted by needle prick and other sharp injuries. So the infections transmitted through blood transfusion, contaminated needles, etc., they are also considered as inoculative method. Now the vector-borne diseases, we have seen these flies, fleas or mosquitoes, they bite, and because of that bite, the disease causing agent gets into the susceptible host. So these all are inoculative methods of transmission. Now moving on to vertical transmission. It refers to the transmission of infection from mother to the fetus. It may be categorized into transplacental transmission and transmission via birth canal. So first about transplacental transmission. Infection occurs through the placental barrier, which leads to abortion, miscarriage or stillbirth. And if babies are born, they suffer from congenital malformation. Such infections are known as teratogenic infection. The infectious agent affect the organogenesis of the fetus. So these transplacental infection, they are called congenital infection or teratogenic infection. The disease causing agents, they are categorized into TORC infections, which include toxoplasma causing toxoplasmosis. Then there is rubella virus causing rubella, cytomegalovirus causing cytomegalic inclusion disease, and herpes simplex virus infection. And others include syphilis, chickenpox, etc. So all these viruses, Treponema pallidum, varicella zoster virus, toxoplasma, rubella virus, CMV, HSV, all these agents, they can transmit transplacentally from the carrying mother to the fetus, and they can cause congenital malformations by interfering with the organogenesis of the fetus. Now there is one more group that is considered under vertical transmission, that is the infective agent or the infection is transmitted while the baby is passing through the birth canal. It means there won't be any congenital malformations in the baby. The baby may suffer from the ill effects of the disease, but there won't be any teratogenic complications. So such agents include the hepatitis B virus, group B streptococcus, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, gonococcus, listeria, then HIV. All these, they do not cause developmental defects and malformations, but they can cause disease. So we have discussed about the various routes or the modes of transmission of disease causing agent. Now about iatrogenic infection, they are the physician induced infection, the infections which are transmitted during any therapeutic procedures due to lack of asepsis, injections, lumbar puncture, catheterization, blood transfusion, etc. So we have discussed about the various types of infection, the sources of infection, the routes of entry of the disease causing agent, the portals of entry and the portals of exit of the infective agent. So that is about in the first session. In the next session we will be discussing about microbial pathogenicity. So read well and learn well.